the effect this horrific incident has had on the victims, their families, and on the whole community. And I just feel it's appropriate that we show our respect. Thank you very much. Please sit. If I might remind you that this session is being live streamed, and it is likely that more members of the public than we're accustomed to are watching us and taking an interest in this evening's proceedings. I'd also remind you that we've got a rather hefty agenda this evening. There's a lot to get through. So if necessary, I will invoke standing orders and restrict the number of times members can speak on any one issue. I will exercise leniency provided there's no unnecessary repetition and that we're maintaining some sort of semblance of being on time. Members will be pleased to know that standing orders specify that a meeting will not last more than 4 hours. So, with no further ado, we will begin. Town Clerk, apologies for absence.
We have an apology, Mr Mayor, from Councillor Munro.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. If any members have any declarable interests relating to this evening's agenda, would you please declare that now? In which case, if you become aware of anything as we go through the agenda, please make it known as soon as you're aware of it. Item 3, minutes of the Council meeting from Tuesday the 11th of June. Are you happy that they are an accurate representation of proceedings? All happy? All in favour, show please. Thank you very much. And are there any matters arising not otherwise covered in this evening's agenda? Okay, fine, thank you very much. So that brings us to item 4, public representations and questions. As I understand it, we have not received any. Thank you very much. Now, don't be fooled by the numbering. It now says item 9, but this is because we tweaked the sequence in the agenda because we felt it would be important to have our debate on the subject of the Neighbourhood Development Plan while the presentation was fresh in our minds, and also before we get too weary. Perhaps you have had a very comprehensive brief from the clerk, and that contains some recommendations. This item is open for debate. Who would like to start? Councillor Hutton.
Thank you. The neighbourhood plan is a lovely piece of work. Absolutely no doubt, it's a lovely piece of work. But I think we must come back to this question of this settlement boundary. For whatever reason, it looks like there's an omission in the plan. It really does look as though everything else is agreed, but this settlement boundary, to many of us, is so obvious that we can't see what all the problem is. Fundamentally, as I see it, we know that people of Tavistock are extremely concerned about house building. They know we need houses, they know we need affordable houses, but they don't want people to be able to come and just say that field looks quite nice They want to be able to say, where is Tavistock? And we're told in the joint local plan that we're told by the experts that we know where Tavistock is and we know where the joint local plan is. But the reality is that in the last 2 years, we've had the Hazeldean problem where they couldn't decide whether that was in Tavistock or not. We had the Herdwick golf course where we tried to build there a couple of years ago, and the question was, is that in Tavistock or not? We have the problem with the farm at Wilmanston. Is it in Tavistock or not? Why can't we just say, here's Tavistock, this is a little map of Tavistock, we get a pen and we say, this is where we all know Tavistock is. We know where we've agreed building, we know where the Tors is, we know where Emden is. That's all part of Tavistock, but that is our boundary of Tavistock. It's simple. People then know if you want to build, developers and the population know if you want to build in Tavistock, fundamentally, if you're inside the settlement, it's very easy. But if you're outside the settlement, it's not that it can't be done, it's just that it's saying, well, that's not actually in our settlement, so we need to, as a town, think more carefully about whether we do need to extend that. So I think that we need to look at this settlement problem again, because I think it's an omission that we may leave to regret. And we've been told that we can always look at it in the future if we think there's a problem with something. We can rediscuss it, we can add things to the plan. But if we think there's a problem now, why are we waiting for a year down the line saying there's a problem? Why don't we deal and look at it now? And I'm not concerned by the fact it may delay things 3 or 4 months, because everything else will be still here, it will still matter.
Councillor Jeff Moody, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally agree with Councillor Hutton. You couldn't have said it better. I was thinking exactly the same thing. Is that the settlement boundary doesn't? We're told, and it is a living document, the neighbourhood plan, and the settlement boundary, if we decide, or if it is decided to move it. The thing is that I'm still of the view that the JLP has implications in it that require a settlement boundary. We were told again tonight that we would be one of few that had a settlement boundary, and Oakhampton was mentioned. Having looked at the Oakhampton neighbourhood plan, there is a settlement boundary, so the information that we've had tonight doesn't concur with what is on the website. But I don't have a problem with having a settlement boundary. It doesn't stop development outside it. It means that the JLP has policies that influence those developments, where they have different policies within the settlement boundary. So I don't see really what the problem is. It doesn't restrict anything. It's a living document, and we can also always, at a future date, modify it. We can add bits if we decide to, is my understanding. Anyway, I totally support Councillor Hutton.
Councillor Parker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The debate hasn't started in the way that I thought it might. You'll be aware, Mr. Mayor, that I've put forward an amendment to the recommendations, and I would like to stand now and move that amendment. I've circulated it to all members and to the town clerk, but I'm happy to read it out at the end of what I have to say. But may I just say why I'm promoting this amendment? Before I start, I just want to remind, I too trained and practiced as a chartered town planner for over 50 years. I too was, until recent months, a member of the Royal Town Planning Institute. I've been the Deputy Planning Officer of a large city. I've worked with parish councils. I've been a consultant. I don't get emotionally involved in my work. I base things on evidence, policy, and its place in both reality and in the policy framework. Now, colleagues, we have a housing crisis. West Devon says so. The neighbourhood development plan says so. The most severe housing crisis in living memory, if I recall it. And now even government accepts that. Just this lunchtime, the Deputy Prime Minister called it the most acute housing crisis in living memory. Now, against that background, the thrust of this neighbourhood development plan is that in Tavistock, we needn't worry about housing development. We've met the joint local plan's requirement for new housing, so all will be well. Now, frankly, that is a serious mistake. Let me explain why. First, because there is, as we've heard tonight, there is no housing requirement or target for Tavistock. As I say, don't take my word for it, that's one of the first pieces of advice that West Devon Council gave the steering group. The pity is that when they were then asked to provide an indication of Tavistock's housing requirements, West Devon officers refused. We don't do that, they said, and this is in the consultation statement, we only do it on a district-wide basis for the whole of West Devon. Now that broke a fundamental national planning policy. When a neighbourhood plan team asks you for an indicative housing requirement, you should provide it. So in this case, from the outset, the neighbourhood plan was hamstrung, with no idea of how much new housing is really required. They only knew two things. First, that the joint local plan doesn't set targets, it only sets a minimum for West Devon with no maximum figure. Second, the vast majority of West Devon's development, however much it is, should be built in Tavistock and Oakhampton, the two main towns. We now know a third, which is that the government intends to increase the number of new homes by 25%. Not market, affordable or social, whether market, affordable or social, and that the numbers will be proportionate to the size of the town or city involved. So in terms of West Devon and their new numbers, Tavistock is in the front line. So how much housing are we actually likely to need in Tavistock? I've been through this in detail in my submission, so I'll just skate through it. The evidence shows that if we just take the affordable housing from the neighbourhood plan's housing needs assessment, we need between 300 and 800 new homes by 2034. If we add the shortfall caused by the stalled TORS development, there could easily be a need for over 1,000 new homes in Tavistock in the next 10 years. Now, these homes cannot be built on windfall sites in the built-up area. Those sites don't exist. 1,000 homes at 30 per hectare, that's 30 odd hectares of land, 75 acres. Can you think of 75 acres within the built-up area? It doesn't exist. Now, all of us who've been on this council and West Devon in the past 10 years know that Tavistock is surrounded, I'm not inventing this, by house builders with their eyes on sites at Callington Road. One of the other respondents referred to that, the David Wilson site behind Uplands, 250 houses. Violet Lane, 150 houses. Anderton Lane, still Redrow has that aspiration for another 80 houses. Brook Lane, and there's more, we all know of more. Now, one thing that I and the neighbourhood plan agree on is that we will need to direct new housing to exception sites. In fact, showing that I am up to date, the recent Devon Housing Commission report also backs this view, published a couple of days ago. They say very strongly that we should make maximum use of exception sites, and I quote, "These are sites on the edge of settlements adjacent to the development boundary." This is the top people in Devon. The Commission also makes the same point as me, that we can use exception sites to maximise affordable housing, requiring twice as much as a normal site. It also points out that community land trusts have a real role to play in developing these exception sites. So where are the exception sites in Tavistock? The neighbourhood plan says nothing. The joint local plan says nothing. It's left to developers and West Devon officers. to decide what's an exception site and not. You'd think that would be easy, but since the admin blunder, and it was an admin blunder, that led to the joint local plan to be adopted without a settlement boundary, there have been arguments left, right and centre about where countryside starts and Biltrop areas stop. High Wilminster, already been referred to, Herdwick Golf Course, Old Exeter Road, a crazy site where 3 sites in a row. First one is outside the settlement boundary, the third one is outside the settlement boundary, the one in between is within the settlement boundary. A ridiculous situation. Hazelden House, the Farriers in Leamington, Widden Down, Folligate. There's lots of examples of settlement without a settlement boundary where applicants, officers, communities and councillors have been at loggerheads about where the countryside starts and where sites can be classed as exception sites, and the local community has had no say in resolving those arguments. Crazily, several had to be sorted out by planning inspectors. What a waste of time and money, especially when the issue can be stopped in a heartbeat as soon as we consult our community and adopt a settlement boundary to let every developer and all our residents know without any argument where our precious countryside starts, as every other neighbourhood plan in West Devon has done. I've checked again just now, all the other made plans have a plan with a settlement boundary. Incidentally, those other settlements that do have settlement boundaries don't have arguments about where countryside starts and the built-up area stops, because it's obvious from the first time a developer looks at a plan. Now, I'm not doing this lightly. Based on harsh experience in moving this amendment, I genuinely believe that the neighbourhood plan is making a mistake, leaving the choice of where and how to develop to house builders, where, with us reacting. A settlement boundary, Mr. Mayor, isn't the answer to everything, but it's a great start, and it's relatively simple because I circulated the plan the other day. West Devon have already done.
Councillor Parker, thank you, but that's a good 5 minutes plus, so I'm going to ask
One more
you
sentence.
to stop.
Okay.
Thank you.
West Devon have already done all the heavy lifting.
Okay. Now, members, any further comments or questions, please? Councillor Mann.
On the question of a motion for this idea that we go back out to another Regulation 14 consultation, which will delay the plan by another, I don't know, 6, maybe 7 months, I object. And I would just like to say that I don't think it's a very good idea. We can do this. We can adopt a settlement boundary. The town hasn't come to us with this. Councillor Parker has. There are no other comments, not through 3 years of consultation, requesting a settlement boundary. This is a community-led document. It has been through hundreds of people. You, as town councillors, have sat there and read through it with me 4 times, in which a settlement boundary has been proposed twice in writing, once in the vision statement originally, once in the draft policies that were presented to Budget and Policy in 2023. And no one, when they did not appear in the plan, has said a thing until now. Councillor Parker is a single individual. He is not an elected councillor. He was co-opted. He is got connections with developers. And what you are saying, if you go with his method, is that his view takes precedence over every other person who has commented on this plan. We have presented today, we have shown you, if you look through the consultation statement, we have support, wide support from the community for the plan, as is. What you're asking to do is to say the town council's opinion, informed by one person, is more important. A development boundary is not just a line. It's a way of saying where you're going to have development. I want you to look through the maps that we looked through as a steering group. We've spent loads of time doing this. We've done it 4 times as a group, at different stages of the plan. The settlement boundary proposed in 2017 is off limits. We've been told that, and I've given you that advice. The joint local plan team has said we cannot use it, we'll have to redefine it. That's fine, it's a very doable process. We've looked at the processes that are involved. But what that involves is going out to all local property owners, checking to see where there has been additional development, and there has been some, despite what Councillor Parker has said, and making sure that we do infill and rounding off, which this boundary doesn't do. And part of the reason it didn't move forward at the joint local plan stage, although he's stating that it was because of a mistake, part of it was the methodology. The methodology was not accepted by the joint local plan examiner. And that methodology wasn't accepted because this is a very tight boundary. It includes all of our settlements. So if you look at the first page, first of all, it goes outside of our parish. We don't have control over that, so we can't adopt it. Not as is, okay? It goes into Plasterdown Group Parish Council. The second page has the turquoise. That's what's already been allocated. That's all the land inside the boundary. There is no big space of land. I agree with him on that. There's no land in there. So where is development going to go if we need market housing? Because we're not talking just about affordable housing. We are talking about housing targets for market housing. Where's it going to go? Nowhere in that boundary. Second page is what we've put in as green space to protect in the neighborhood plan. So this is green space where development could come forward potentially on some of these sites, but we don't have that currently protected. When you start talking about a settlement boundary, you are going to be looking at those spaces being the spaces that might be potentially open to development. Look at the next page, and you've got in red the green spaces we haven't protected. And that's because private landowners have asked us not to. You notice there's only one big area of land that's on there, and that is Green Hill. So you can see that that's one area that could be developed. There's an area on Down Road, and there's an area up by Whitchurch Common, and there's a couple of areas over by the Bovis site on Callington Road. But other than that, we couldn't identify as a steering group any reason why you would want to maintain all of the market housing inside of that boundary. In fact, we agree that you're going to need to have housing outside of that boundary if you're going to say that there's a housing target. If you do put a boundary in place, there are other implications besides protecting the countryside. Some of those implications happen in the boundary. We heard about town cramming today. That is what was discussed by Graham Swiss, and that is a real thing. Councillor Hutton, I think you have objected very vociferously to 2 houses being built in a garden just next door to your home, and that is exactly what town cramming is. All the big gardens in Tavistock are up for grabs, because once you put that boundary in place, it's a free-for-all for developers inside of the boundary. Those developers start coming in and saying, hey, let me have your back garden. Hey, can I have that little bit of land there? I'll put 2 houses in. It's cheap, it's easy. You can add 3 or 4 houses to a very small parcel of land. I think we've looked at one on the corner by Ford Street Roundabout, where they wanted to put 16 units of housing on basically an old gas station. Now what you're doing is you're identifying, yes, a line on a map, but what you're doing is you're saying, I want all the development inside this line. Everyone throughout our consultation has said there is too much development in Tavistock. I want infrastructure in place first. I want to protect my local green spaces. I want a walkable environment. I want the inner of Tavistock to remain as is. What you're going to be doing is actually opening it to being the opposite. We've considered this based on the evidence and based on the consultation over the last few years. And what we have come to as a steering group, a community-led steering group, not a bunch of councillors, as Richard Allen said, greying councillors, 12 in a room, making decisions about planning, but actually out in the community. I have hundreds of people that I've spoken with, almost every organisation in the town, and no one has said, what I'd really like you to do is make sure that development can only come forward within the confines of exactly what we have as the footprint of Tavistock today. What they've said is we want good quality housing, we don't want box houses, we want our views protected, we don't want to have green spaces covered. So we've looked at those questions, and I want all of you to make a considered thought that what you would be doing is undoing 3 years of consultation with the community and saying that one individual's comments both privately and now at council, who is an unelected councillor, is more important and carries more weight than all of that consultation that we've done as a steering group.
Councillor Mann, I'm just going to have to stop you, I'm afraid. Councillor Parker.
Thank you. Mr Mayor, I'm not going to go back over the issues, but I do take exception to the, first of all, that somehow I have no status because I wasn't elected. I was co-opted by my colleagues. That I take exception to. I don't know what is meant by I've got connections with developers. Yes, I've worked with developers all my life. I know how they think. I know what they're doing outside Tavistock right at this moment. I know what sites they're looking at. We who've been in the planning field in West Devon and Tavistock have run across them time without number. The idea that we are not out in the community is, well, I hope we all feel upset about that. But there's an old adage in planning that a good point is a good point even if only one person makes it. A bad point is a bad point even if a million make it. I believe that this is a good point, and even though I'm only one poor resident, one co-opted councillor, albeit a councillor who's had 50 years experience of planning on the local authority side and working with developers, I think this is a point worth listening to and acting on. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Poppy. Oh, sorry, Councillor, if you don't mind. Councillor Mrs Ewing, sorry.
All I was going to say is, why on the earth are we debating this now? Sorry. What I was going to say is, why on the earth are we debating this now? All councillors in this room have had the opportunity since 2021 to have feedback. You have, Councillor Parker, because as a member of your local community and where you reside, you have known this plan has been going on for years. You could have asked to join the group, you could have asked all sorts of things, but all you have done is send emails at 4:30 in the morning, which is not really a convenient time for most people. They haven't always been the nicest of emails, you know, and you've now suddenly got people in this room, Councillor Hutton, Councillor Moody, who are all suddenly saying, this is really important. Why now? Why today at 11:59 of the 12th hour or 23:59 of the 12th hour? Why now, when you've had 3 years? That is the bit that actually I think is the most disrespectful of you individuals, because you've had the opportunity and you haven't taken it. You've waited until now. Councillor Parker, I accept you want to say you weren't a councillor, no, but you are a member of this community. You've been a councillor at West Devon, you have been a councillor at Tavistock Town Council. So you have had the opportunity to say things, and I think to be doing it this way is really disrespectful to these people in this room who have worked tirelessly for 3 years on this project, those people behind you. And I just think, if you were so concerned, there are other ways that you could have done this. You've not brought it to the attention of our town clerk.
Please stop, Councillor.
Can I stop both of you?
No, I'm not, this is going live stream. I'm sorry there. I must have the right to reply to that.
Okay, you have the right to reply.
Thank you. June the 14th, 2012. Well, let's start before the neighbourhood plan was started. The town clerk will confirm that it would be my intention to offer my full time to the steering group to work on the town on this neighbourhood plan. I hope the town clerk provides all the reference documents and the first set of documents. We worked on that. I resigned from the Town Council for health grounds was on June the 14th. I had a conversation with Councillor Mann, volunteering my services, just 2021, volunteering my services. The response, which I recorded in an email the following morning, was that the steering group doesn't want me anywhere near this plan because they think I'm the problem. I know there's one other member of the steering group here, and the third one, because there were only councillors on it then, so that must mean that councillors decided they did not want me near this plan. Now, for the next 2 years, anyone who knows me knows that I was doing one of three things. I was either in hospital, being treated for leukemia, or organising food deliveries. When I made the Regulation 14 comment back in March, I made an offer to meet with the steering group to discuss this. That was also rejected. That's why we're having this debate here. Not because I don't care, not because I didn't try. I have tried. And that was rejected.
Members, I'm sorry, but I think we're debating the wrong thing here.
I really need to actually answer that.
Okay.
That looks to be very bad.
You've got right.
Yeah, this is getting slightly out of hand. I'm going to take Councillor Poppy first, then I'll come back to you, Councillor Mann.
Yeah, thank you. The Town Clerk's made 5 recommendations. This is an extremely robust report that's had the input of every member of Tavistock community, should they wish to, over a long period of time. We've reached a point where the report is exceptional. It's rigorous, and I suggest that we move to approve the recommendations that have been put down by the Town Clerk, these 5 points. I think drawing arbitrary lines on a map has never succeeded anywhere, and I don't see it succeeding at this moment in time. So I move that we end the debate and go to these 5 recommendations and vote on these 5 recommendations and close this matter out and commend the team on an exceptional report.
Okay, thank you. So we have a proposal, we have a seconder. I am going to come back to Councillor Mann because I think you need to have your right of reply. So,
Nobody seconded.
well, to be strictly speaking, Councillor Parker, you didn't move an amendment, you moved an alternative motion because the principal motion hadn't yet been considered.
That was the last sentence that was cut off on.
Okay. So, Councillor Mann, do you want to come back?
When I started this process, the person that actually got me excited about it was Councillor Parker. I absolutely was in agreement with him. The things that were happening at that time in Tavistock, this was actually prior to the adoption of the joint local plan, were horrible. Herdwick happened before then. There were a couple of others that he mentioned that happened before the joint local plan. This is important, okay? I wanted a settlement boundary at the beginning. I'm the one that keeps bringing it up, actually, to the steering group. I'm the one that actually thought it was an interesting idea. I also wanted to work with him. What I wanted to point out today at that initial meeting was that his facts often do not align with reality. And what I want to do is say this. He has 2 or 3 times presented to you evidence that somehow he's been prevented from being part of the neighbourhood plan group. And he's used an email that he crafted himself of a private phone call that only he and I were on in order to do so. And that technique is a type of manipulation where his voice has replaced mine. And I have never spoken about that because it was such a disturbing conversation. It ended with a threat to a different councillor that was clearly telling me that the threat might be me because of me taking on the neighbourhood plan. So following that, I still wanted to work with him. This is who I am. I'm a very open person. I've been open all throughout this entire process. And on the 10th of August, 2021, he sent another email doing the same thing, describing me as having stopped him from taking part in the joint local plan, in the neighborhood plan. And I just need to read to you what he said. He said what I said to him in that email, and I've got the whole chain, and the leader of the West Devon Borough Council was CC'd on the email, Neil Jory. Dear Graham, this is the second email in which you've misquoted me and insinuated that I've indicated you aren't welcome at the table in relation to planning matters at the NDP. The first was one you sent to the entire councillor-appointed steering group after I called you to discuss the plan, to ask for advice, to thank you for your work on a separate planning matter, and to pass on my compliments for the wonderful state of the sensory garden. I'm sorry that you were left with the general impression that I have any problems with you with regard to the involvement in the neighbourhood development plan. Let me be very clear. I don't, and I don't know of any general group who does. My memory of that specific meeting is that I'd been shown an email exchange, and I'm not going to go into that because it's separate, and there is an article in the Tabby Times. These are the things that were the problem, but I don't recall ever stating you are the problem or that you didn't have good relations with councillors generally. When we had our phone discussion, you offered your services as a planner to the neighbourhood plan group, and I agreed to let them know that you had done so. I have done so, and I expect that you will be involved in the neighbourhood plan and have discussed this with all of the councillors on the group, except perhaps Councillor Smith, and I've also discussed it with Neil. That's Neil Jory, the leader. You seem to really believe that I'm operating a campaign against you, and for that, I'm sorry. I've respected your advice and experience throughout our time in council together, and I hope you will see me as an ally in making a neighbourhood plan for the town, rather as someone that's working against you. And his reply was, actually, far from believing that you're running a campaign against me, I've always thought that you and I see things the same way. And then I said, thanks, Graham. I'm really glad that we can move past that. I'm looking forward to the neighbourhood plan finally happening for Tavistock, and your expertise and involvement will be very much appreciated. Following that, in February of 2022, I met with him, with Councillor Ward, in order to review the initial survey, which we had worked on at that point for about 7 months, because I wanted to make sure that it was fit for purpose, and because actually I do respect his advice. I do think that he has good things to say. But at this moment in time, I think his approach is the wrong approach based on timing. We can absolutely have a settlement boundary for Tavistock, but if we do that, what I've placed in front of you, those pieces of paper show you, we are going to be calling out developers who have fields on our edge right now. They will be wanting to change this. We will have to actually deal with those objections. We will essentially be entering into a period of strategic planning that could last for much longer than the 6 months that just dropping a boundary or a line into a plan is. So I just want to clarify that the facts that have been presented to you have been misrepresenting the actual state of the ground that happened in those years, and that there are similar misrepresentations on housing numbers, on whether things have failed. None of that is in the evidence base of the neighbourhood plan. None of that exists. What's the citation? How do you know that the plans have failed? How do you know that those developments aren't coming forward? No one at West Devon has told me that.
Can we come back to the main issue, which is the recommendations made by the clerk in his comprehensive report? And we've had the recommendations have been moved, they've been seconded. Does anybody wish to debate them or take any other course of action? Councillor Parker.
The rules of debate say that I will now move my amendment. Is there anyone who will second it?
Okay, so the amendment has been moved and seconded, and that will now be voted on after further debate if you wish. If it is passed, that will then become part of the substantive motion, and we will need to vote on that as well. So, would anyone wish to say anything about the amendment, or generally? In that case, I will. When I'm chairing, I usually prefer that others do the talking, but occasionally I have to do it as well. There are a few things that I think I now understand. I hope I understand them correctly. The first is that the National Planning Policy Framework does not require a settlement boundary, i.e. it is optional. You have also heard that the Joint Local Plan doesn't require a settlement boundary. It is clear that there are differences of opinion about the value of settlement boundaries. You've heard some of those differences of opinion aired this evening. Now, I don't think I can be more expert than the experts, and if we have two experts taking a contrary view, we somehow have to find a way through. However, it's clear to me that there are disadvantages to having a settlement boundary as well as advantages. Those disadvantages have been mentioned this evening. They include development pressure within the boundary and potentially increasing land prices and hence house prices within the boundary. There are policies in the Joint Local Plan that can already resist development in the countryside if they're applied properly. And future developments adjacent to or near existing built areas may be desirable, provided they provide affordable housing for local people. And the Deputy Prime Minister was talking about 50% affordable housing in grey zone within the Greenbelt. The Neighbourhood Development Plan once made is not cast in tablets of stone. It should be subject to continuous review, and it should take account of changes in local circumstances, national planning policy, and the forthcoming revision of the Joint Local Plan. In other words, this is not a one-off opportunity to determine a settlement boundary. If it proves to be necessary or desirable in the light of circumstance and experience, it can be created. When I made these notes, I commented that we await with interest what the new government will do with planning policy. We now have some idea of what they're going to do with planning policy. We don't have details, but we do know that they're talking about building 1.5 million houses by the end of this Parliament, that they are talking about building in countryside areas where it can be justified on previous land use. We know that they're going to look at the estimation of housing needs in a different way, as yet unspecified, but that relates to housing need in communities and housing affordability. We don't know what impact that's going to have yet, so it's quite clear that the Neighbourhood Development Plan will need to be revised in the future. I do not believe that the emergent Neighbourhood Development Plan should stand or fall on a single issue. We need to be as sure as we can that the NDP has been informed by the views of the community, that correct procedures have been followed, and that due notice has been taken of the professional advice obtained from the local planning authority and the planner employed to advise the steering group. I am so reassured as a result of what I have heard this evening and what I have seen in the past. If we are so reassured, I am minded to propose that Council submit the NDP to the local planning authority and go on to the next stage. If we are swayed by a single issue, where there is a difference of professional opinion between the planning expert engaged to advise the steering group and a council member who has long experience of planning but is not acting in an official capacity as a planner, we leave ourselves open to the accusation that council has ignored the professional advice that we have been given by our appointed expert, and that will not look good if something later goes wrong. I finish my note by saying I think we may be in for a long evening. Is there any further debate? In which case, let's vote on the amendment. Councillor Parker, for the benefit of those listening and watching, would you be so kind as to read it out, please?
Sorry, Councillor Parker, could you put your... otherwise people won't be able to hear online, sorry.
I'll start again, sorry. Delete recommendations B to D and substitute the following. B. Request the steering group to 1. Prepare a proposal for the adoption of a settlement boundary for Tavistock based on the draft boundary prepared by West Devon Council in the JLP Thriving Towns and Village Settlement Boundary Topic Paper, March 2017, and setting out the relationship of the boundary to the relevant JLP policies, in particular Countryside Policies TTV 26 and 27. 2. Carry out a public consultation on that proposal as an amendment to the Regulation 14 NDP. 3. Prepare a supplementary consultation statement reporting the results of the consultation and propose any relevant amendments to the draft submission NDP. And 4. Report these results and amendments to the Town Council's Development Management and Licensing Committee and Full Council, and thereafter proceed with the submission procedures. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Members, I'm asking for a recorded vote because this is an important issue. And Town Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to be clear, this is now voting on the amendment which has been proposed by Councillor Parker and seconded by Councillor Hutton, and that is the amendment to the report. So this is the amendment itself. I will ask each councillor if you are voting for, against or abstaining on the matter in alphabetical order, with the Mayor and Deputy Mayor last of all. So on the amendment, Councillor Ewings.
Blimey, what it is to go first. Against.
Councillor Hutton.
For.
Councillor Johnson.
Against.
Councillor Lewis.
Against.
Councillor Mann.
Against.
Councillor Martin.
Against.
Councillor B. Moody.
For.
Councillor J. Moody. Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Poppy.
Against.
Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Venning.
Against.
Councillor Hipsey.
Against.
Councillor Ward.
Against.
The motion is defeated by 10 votes to 4. Sorry, the amendment is defeated by 10 votes to 4.
So the clerk's recommendations become the motion. Again, it has been Councillor Parker.
Can I just say that I am and always will be a professional. I put my case. I've heard the case against. I've heard my colleagues vote on it, and my case has lost. So I accept that, and thank you all for the debate got a bit hairy at times, and I wasn't terribly pleased with it, but thank you for at least a sensible debate. From here on in, I will throw my weight, such as it is, behind the neighbourhood plan as it stands, and anything I can do to help and improve it, the offer is there.
Thank you, that's most gracious. The recommendations are, and again I'll read them out for the benefit of people watching from outside. A. Commend the Neighbourhood Development Plan Steering Group for the scope, depth and rigour of its approach to the NDP and associated documents and arrangements. B. Approve and endorse the submission version Neighbourhood Development Plan and the Design Code and Guide for Tavistock, together with the accompanying Basic Conditions Statement, Consultation Statement and Strategic Environmental Assessment Screening Report, Habitat Regulation Assessment Screening Report, and summary of the plan's policies as a basis for referral to the local planning authorities in order that the plan may progress to the Regulation 16 stage. C. Authorise the planning consultant engaged by the Town Council to support the Neighbourhood Development Plan Steering Group in consultation with the Chairman of the Steering Group to undertake any necessary non-material corrections or amendments, including those of an administrative nature, prior to submission. D. Subject to C above, approve and authorise submission to the local planning authorities in due course. E. Endorse the continuation of extant regular reporting arrangements from the NDPSG to the Council on the progress of the plan through the remaining stages of the plan-making process. We move to a vote, and we will again have it as a recorded vote.
So, in order again then, please. Councillor Ewings.
4.
Councillor Hutton. 4. Councillor Johnson.
4.
Councillor Lewis.
4.
Councillor Mann.
4.
Councillor Martin. 4. Councillor B. Moody.
4.
Councillor J. Moody.
4.
Councillor Parker.
4.
Councillor Poppy.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Venning.
4.
Councillor Hipsey.
4.
Councillor Ward.
4.
The motion is carried unanimously, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, members. Councillor Mann.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a personal explanation?
You may.
I just want to say thank you for your support for the neighbourhood plan on behalf of the community, especially, and I think it will be a really great document for Tavistock to have in its hands, and I really do believe that we can amend it in ways that will help when we have the new planning policies in place. With the new government in place, there are going to be planning changes coming which are going to require us to work and potentially review the plan, but in the meantime, this neighbourhood plan is going to be the most meaningful addition to the local plan that the Town Council can and should support. Remember, from here, there is still another consultation. So at Reg 16, an examination, there will also be an examination, and the plan is going to yet change through that process. Any delay that would leave Tavistock without any say on local development for any longer is out of the question in my mind, especially in the current circumstances. So I think we've made a really great decision today, and I appreciate it. And thank you, Councillor Parker, for your kindnesses there at the end.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mann. Can I express my personal gratitude to the whole steering group for all the work they've done over a protracted period, and I look forward to you bringing this plan to completion and seeing that it is finally a made plan. Thank you very much indeed. So members, take a breath, have a slurp of water, and then we'll move on with the agenda. So let's get going again. So the next item on the agenda is item 5, General Finance, little a, Schedule of Payments, to consider and endorse the monthly accounts, and little b, Budget Monitoring Report, to consider and endorse. Do any members have any questions or comments to make? Are you happy that we consider and endorse both of those? All in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Next item is Budget and Policy Committee. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to present the minutes for the meeting of Budget and Policy Committee held on Tuesday, 16th July 2024. Item 80, arrangements for the mowing of council land, recommendation that, subject to feedback from the council, the Works Manager prepare a report setting out, along the lines listed in the document, potential arrangements in connection for the management by way of cutting of its green open spaces, verges and cemeteries.
Thank you. The recommendation has been moved. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Mrs Johnson. All in favour, please show.
Carried.
Thank you.
Item 84, urgent matters brought forward at the discretion of the chairman. We talked about the Devon County Council Children's Centre consultation, and it was recommended that the letter submitted by you, sir, Mr Mayor, be endorsed and representing the formal position of the Town Council.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You have missed a few out. Never mind. We'll go back.
Have I really?
You have. You've turned 2 pages over at once. But we have got a recommendation for item 84. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Mrs Ewing would like to give an update on the children's services.
Since we had our discussions, as some of you know, that I had a meeting with the Chief Executive, with the Cabinet member for Children's Services. I received an email on Monday of this week from the Head of Children's Services, Mr Stuart Collins, and he indicated that there would be a provision kept in this town. As I mentioned, I think at BNP, we talked about the Alexander Centre being empty. That was going to be looked into. That was not referred to in the email. It just said that there will be a provision. It didn't state where, and I haven't seen anyone from the team to be able to ask them any more details.
Thank you. In which case, having moved the recommendation, do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Mrs Ewings. And all in favour, please show.
Carried.
Thank you. Back to 81, please, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, apologies, Mr Mayor. So we have 81, Hemlock Water Dropwort. We have 82, Pannier Market, and 83, Heritage Meeting.
Okay, thank you. And we'll take the rest of the minutes of BNP in part 2. That brings us to item 7, Development, Management and Licensing Committee. 2 meetings, 25th of June, 15th of July. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I rise to present the Development, Management and Licensing Committee held in this chamber on the 25th of June. 57 apologises for absence, 58 confirmation of minutes, 59 declarations of interest, 60 Dartmoor National Park Authority, 61 town planning issues, 62 general correspondence, 63 Tavistock Neighbourhood Development Plan, which I shall rapidly pass on from, 64 urgent business brought forward at the discretion of the chairman, which there were none, 65 planning applications presented to West Devon, and there are 2 recommendations, 3 in fact, that the recommended that the views of the Town Council as listed in Appendix B be passed to the local planning authority for consideration.
Okay, thank you. So that recommendation is moved. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Poppy. All in favour, please show.
Carried.
Thank you.
There is also 2 sub-recommendations. The first one is that the planning application 12324 OPA received from Tillier Homes, Weston, for the development site, which is down on the Plymouth Road. Reference was made to the prior recommendation of D&L Committee, minute 39B, subsequently considered at council meeting on the 11th of June 2024, council minute number 50 refers on there. And the third one is that Councillor Parker undertake to contact West Devon Borough Council to ascertain the design brief on Bedford cottages and similar premises. That's the end.
Okay, thank you. So those 2 recommendations are moved. Seconder? Are you feeding back or seconding?
I'm seconding.
Thank you very much. All in favour, please show.
Carried.
Okay, and the meeting of the 15th of July, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise again to present the DMNL committee meetings things on the 15th of July this year. 67, apologies for absence. 68, confirmation of minutes. 69, declarations of interest. 70, Dartmoor National Park Authority. 71, town planning issues. 72, general correspondence. 73, Tavistock Neighbourhood Development Plan, and that's that one. And then we've got 74 urgent business brought forward at the discretion of the chairman, 75 planning applications, and the recommendation is that the views of the town councils listed in Appendix B be passed to the local authority, planning authority, for consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. A seconder, please. Councillor Parker, all in favour, please show.
Carried.
And 76, Mr. Mayor, is the next DMNL meeting is this Tuesday coming at 6:30 in this chamber. Everyone is very welcome. We're always happy to see you and hear your views.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is casual vacancy co-option for Tavistock North Ward, and we've had an application. Councillor Mann?
I'm just going to have to declare knowing the... I need to declare that I know the applicant, and so I'm going to leave the room while you discuss it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Moody, same?
No, I was just in an election with the co-option applicant at the 2023 elections.
Okay, thank you. So I'm pleased to welcome Mrs. Judy Hughes. If you come forward to, probably if you go to that corner there, and if Andy, if you could switch on your microphone for Judy, that would be great. Thank you very much indeed for completing the application form and giving us lots of information. That's very kind. I'm afraid you have the magnificent sum of 2 minutes to add any further information you'd like to, and then members may or may not choose to ask you a question or two.
That's fine. Yes, I did fill in the application form as detailed as I could because I wasn't convinced of my ability to speak concisely in 2 minutes. So my name is Judy Hughes. I work full-time. But I'm lucky enough to be working from home, so that doesn't afford me a little bit more flexibility. But I work for the NHS in their property division as a business and performance insight manager. But before then, I actually used to work in finance. So between my earlier career in finance and the current one in property administration and property management, I can read profit and loss accounts through budgets through to leases. I understand that could be of interest to this council. You have a wide variety of lease interests. My children are old, so they're all adult now, and they do not need me as much as they used to. Well, they do, but for different reasons, and it's primarily fiscal. But I am filled in my mid-50s with this overwhelming compulsion to start giving something back to my chosen community, because it's not my born community. I've only come here in the last 2 years, but it's as good a place as any, I suspect. And we have been welcomed. My daughter works for council, as you probably all know, and she enjoys it. And my mother is actually very happy here. I did refer to her on my application. She's early on stage, so I'm not her full-time carer. She hasn't got a full-time carer, actually, but she's happy, and that's good enough for me, so I'm quite happy to reach out as well. So I believe town councils are well placed to drive growth, foster community engagement, and improve local conditions for people. So I would like the opportunity to assist in some small way, if I can, by seeking co-option. I'm quite aware that there are many nuances in council that I will not be familiar with. This is completely new to me, but I am a willing person when it comes to learning and listening. So I would hope that, like I say, that I could be of benefit somewhere in this process, and I would very much welcome the opportunity. Is that 2 minutes?
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Don't be put off by the arcane and strange ways of councils. All of us around the table had to start somewhere and become familiar with it.
Some of us are still learning, as you've probably found.
And the NHS has sort of dumbed down itself, you see, to make it more welcoming and inclusive. But yeah.
Okay. Are you happy to, if there are any, respond to questions?
Oh,
Members, do anyone have any questions to ask Councillor Hutton?
Yes.
Yeah, the first thing is don't be put off for what you've just seen for the last hour. that actually was the nastiest bit of council business that we've had for years. That was quite unpleasant. So that's
It
not
was unusual.
That's not normal.
That's all right.
I've got one question which just intrigues me. You say you're independent, and most of us are independent,
Oh,
but you
okay.
say you're a member of the Conservative Party, and
Yes.
you're sort of as a Conservative candidate. So
It's well known.
just explain it.
Because at a town council level, I don't believe politics plays a part. It shouldn't play a part. I am a Conservative by nature and by fact, but it does not play any part at a town council level. It should never do. It never should. And I would be willing to be fully ejected if I ever raised a blue flag in this environment. But no, I just don't believe it plays a part.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions?
I'm better at questions than free speech.
In which case, Judy, we have to ask you to just step out of the room and perhaps go into the office opposite while members consider your application, and then we'll call you back in just a few moments.
No worries, thank you.
So, we don't have any other candidates, we only have the one candidate, so it's a question of yes or no. And we will do this as a written ballot.
So please indicate for or against or abstain. Can I just remind members that a majority of votes of those present is required?
We just want to write yes or no.
Yes and no, it's actually
It is, we can't spell it.
The candidate is returned and will be joining us as a councillor. No, you can go back to the corner if you like, Judy. I'm pleased to inform you that Council has elected for you to join us. The clerk will be in contact with you. There are various formalities that have to be gone through before you can actually sit as a councillor, but that shouldn't take very long, should it, Carl? No?
Next week or 10 days we'll sort it all out.
Okay, so the Carl assures me all that will be sorted out in the next week to 10 days, and then you'll be able to join us and sit as a full councillor just like everybody else.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone.
Thank you. You're welcome to stay, Judy, until we get to what's called part 2, when it becomes confidential. And as you're not yet officially a councillor, I'm afraid you will need to leave when we get to that point. Right, item 10, service reports. Roman 1, General Manager's report. Does anybody have any questions for the General Manager? Does the General Manager wish to add anything? Received?
Yeah.
Roman 2, Pannier Market report. Any comments, any questions?
Received.
Works Department report. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to commend the Works Department, if I may, on the splendid support and the grand opening of Bannerwell Street Play Park, which I think last Friday, which was absolutely amazing.
Smashing.
Some of us actually enjoyed testing out the equipment as well as watching the kids playing on it too. It's a real feather in the council's cap, in my opinion.
Thank you. I'm sure that will be relayed to our works team. Okay, and then Town Hall and Butchers Hall report. Received? Okay. 11, Finance and Other Matters. To receive for information the following. Report of the Assistant to the Town Clerk. Do you have anything to add, Jan? No. And are there any questions for the Assistant to the Town Clerk? Okay. Consultation with market traders. To receive the report of the General Manager in connection with the consultation undertaken. And then E, to receive, Roman 1, any update from or questions to council representatives serving on other outside bodies in connection with the work of those bodies. Councillor Mrs Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start off, please, with Kingdom House, if I may. We're looking at the future of the building. In a couple of years' time, we'll be celebrating 50 years of Kingdom House, which is now the Printworks. It was the Printworks for the local paper, so it's 50 years of it being a community building. So it's a big occasion coming up, and we need to look into the future and making sure it's sustainable for the future. In so much as we're going to carry out a feasibility study to find out what our users want and what is possible there. I'm very pleased to say that the Borough Council are assisting us with funding advice and looking at people who might be able to do a feasibility study. So that's been really helpful, so thank you for that. We may change the configuration of the building, and I think we've definitely got to make the roof good. It's something that I've been pushing for quite a while. The money that we had to do the outside walls and really improve the building has made a huge impact on that building, and now we need to take it to the next step, so that's good. We've recently lost 3 of our trustees for various reasons. Somebody's moved to Kent, somebody else had business commitments, so we are in the process of recruiting some replacements. So very positive outlook, and we are moving forward with that building.
Thank you, that's good news.
The railway.
The railway.
As you know, I represent the Town Council on Oak Rail and Tabby Rail, and the Borough Council has just appointed me to be on the Devon Rail Forum, which is really quite helpful. Start off with the fun with the railway. We took part in the carnival, which was great fun, and gave out loads of our railway leaflets.
and generally there has been a lot of support. Now, if I tell you what the position was up until the weekend, and then I'll tell you how it might have changed since then. So, in terms of the Tavistock project, for the next 2 years, so we're aiming for phase 1 with a benefit cost ratio assessment of assets in 6 months' time. Following that, the Department for Transport will make a decision if they're going to fund the business case. This will take an estimated 5 months. Then we will go to a full business case with detailed designs, etc. That will take 12 months. So next couple of years, mostly be planning, writing the business case, etc. Excuse me. Then we are looking at, this was a report given by Bogdan Lupu, who is the Network Rail person who's been dealing with the Tavistock to Plymouth line. The decision to develop paper has been submitted to the Department for Transport, Restoring Your Railway Board, but it is on pause pending the new government's spending review. Right, I'm sure you'll know that the government, Rachel Reeves, made an announcement yesterday. One of the things that she said was cancelled was Restoring Your Railways £500 million. But if you look at that money, already 40 million of that has been spent on the Oakhampton line. Various other little bits have been spent elsewhere. We are trying to find out what implications this might have for the Tavistock to Plymouth line, and at the moment, I'm afraid I don't know. So hopefully by the end of the week we'll be a bit clearer. We're asking people in government and people at Devon County what the situation is. But I'm afraid at the moment I don't know.
Understood. Councillor Jeff Moody, then Councillor Mrs.
Thank you,
Ewings.
Mr. Mayor. On that issue, I learnt this afternoon, having researched the announcement, is that the way I see it is that the project for reviving our trains is being parked, going down a siding, and what it's suggesting is that projects that are underway won't necessarily be cancelled, but the Secretary of State for Transport is reviewing the changes, and there is a possibility that existing projects may continue. But watch this space.
In a meeting before I came down here, I think Councillor Moody was present. You were, weren't you, Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Councillor Mann was absent. Sorry. The railway was brought up. Now, the comment was yesterday that they were all scrapped, and that was that. But we're not part of the Restoring Heritage Railways. We are part of the cancelled HS2 project. And that's where our funding was coming from. It was never coming from the 500 million that was for restoring railways. Basically, we need to be speaking to Plymouth, who are ardent supporters of this railway, and we need to be working with their chief exec, Tracy Lees, and with Tudor Evans to keep him on side for it. The comment from our officer was, it could go on the minister's desk, but we've got to put it there. So there is still hope until we know more.
Thank you for that clarification.
Councillor Parker?
Just a little bit of advice to West Devon members from someone who was there. If, heaven forbid, this project does get cancelled, have a look at the Callington Road Section 106 agreement, because any money that's been committed at that point switches over half to affordable housing and half to improvements to the A386.
Councillor Mrs. Ewings?
Thank you, that's the bit I forgot. All funding, because Callington Road is not the only one, the Butcher Park Hill development, Old Launceston Road, they have all contributed to it. So any significant developments have contributed. That money all sits with Devon County Council. And from that money, as you say, I think half for Callington Road, because they didn't deliver as many houses, but actually they have delivered 26% of the 30% that is set, but they were only set 17%, so they have over-delivered. So I'm not sure how much of that theory will still stand. But the rest of the money will go to buses and other transport within the area, so whether it's the Devon cycle paths, walking, active travel routes, etc., that it could go to them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm lost now. Oh yes, feedback from members following their attendance at any training sessions. Item 12, to receive communications or reports as may be submitted by the Town Mayor. I have nothing for you. Urgent matters brought forward at the discretion of the Town Mayor. There is something that we need to just have a chat about. We can't make any decisions because we haven't got them on the agenda. But this relates to the Public Spaces Protection Order consultation, which is running, I gather, in August. Wonderful month, but that's the month it's running. Carl, do you want to just say a few words about how we tackle this?
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, obviously it's a bit of a timing issue in the sense that it falls within the summer recess. So it's not a decision because it's not tabled on the agenda, but just to really seek a consensus from amongst you all, if you would be happy with this as an approach, which is that what we can do is we can bring it to the next budget and policy meeting. We can't push it to next council for a formal decision because that would be out of time. We bring it to next budget and policy meeting. All members get the report. We also invite all members to attend that meeting and to contribute to any discussion points they might have. And then the outcome from that meeting, we feed back to West Devon Borough Council, which will be within the consultation period of time. And assuming that there isn't a divided opinion in relation to it, we then submit it to the council for formalisation subsequently, but West Devon will then have the views of this council within the consultation period. Unfortunately, because of their own timelines, they aren't able to grant us an extension which would enable us to actually include the council. The alternative would be to convene a special meeting of council instead.
Okay. Councillor Mrs Ewings and then Councillor
Do
Park.
I need to declare an interest because I was on Radio Devon and Radio Cornwall on Saturday speaking for it?
Probably technically not at this stage because I'm really seeking an informal consensus from members if they're happy with that approach. So there is no decision in hand at this point.
Councillor Parker.
I think my suggestion has just been cut off at the knees, but I'll try it. Actually, what you need for the audit trail is the authority of this council to delegate to budget and policy the duty to respond on behalf of the council. Is that not right? But you can't do that.
Technically, you are correct, but because it's not tabled on the agenda, this council can't do that. Now, in fairness, I don't think there is a problem given the wide-ranging nature of the delegations that we have for us to respond on that basis, and West Devon have indicated that they're happy for us to respond on that basis. So I don't believe that on this occasion there is in any way a devaluation of the response by virtue of that approach. Had they indicated to the contrary, I think we'd have been in a somewhat different situation and we'd possibly be recommending a different approach if that was. But if you're agreeable to that, what we'll do is that, and then we will circulate that to all members, so all members have an opportunity to contribute to the debate, and Budget and Policy will actually make a recommendation to Council which reflects the discussion there. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Mrs Ewings.
Memory serves me correctly that we've already discussed this at B&P, because Councillor Mrs Mann brought up that she wasn't happy with the dispersal order, and Councillor Poppy, can't forget him. So have we, in essence, already agreed that bit? Because that was the previous B&P, so that would have been before this one, and that previous one will have gone through full council. So in effect, have we already sort of agreed it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kind of.
Confusing.
We have a decision in principle on the pre-consultation consultation without prejudice to the consultation.
Very good, Carl.
So the answer may be exactly the same as it was last time round, but technically this is the formal consultation seeking a response.
So basically it's delegated. Yes.
Absolutely classic. Right. I'm sure that everything is now crystal clear. That brings us to the end of part one.
Move to part 2, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewings.